So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was the fifth descender and challenged the god of Eternity. Why in Inazuma, Naruto x Raiden Shogun, Genshin Impact. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Chapter 1. The Azure Anomaly. The sky above Yoshiori Island didn't merely darken. It fractured, not with the clean, precise cracks of shattered glass, but with the raw, jagged tears of existence itself. Tendrils of a color that defied definition, a shimmering, impossible azure laced with pulsating gold, ripped through the perpetual twilight, swallowing the natural inky blackness of the storm-laden clouds. Lightning, usually a furious expression of Inazuma's Electro-Archon's will, seemed to recoil, its blinding flashes swallowed by the encroaching void. The air, already heavy with the metallic tang of ozone and the damp earthiness of an impending deluge, suddenly thrummed with a resonance that bypassed the ears and vibrated directly against the bones. It was the sound of something else arriving. Below, the ancient, moss-draped stones of Musojin Gorge shuddered. The skeletal remains of the great serpent Orobashi, bleached white against the dark, craggy cliff face, seemed to hum with a forgotten song of raw power. The tumultuous sea, usual, a relentless churn of foam and fury against the jagged coastline, became unnaturally calm in the immediate vicinity of the growing anomaly, its waves flattening as if held captive by an unseen hand. The very ley lines beneath Inazuma, those invisible currents of elemental energy that sustained life and power, screamed in silent alarm, a dissonant hum against the monotonic drone of the Electro-Archon's imposed eternity. From the heart of that impossible tear, a figure descended. He wasn't falling, nor flying, but simply arriving, as if the concept of gravity held no sway over him. His form coalesced from the azure and gold energies, solidifying into a man of striking presence. He stood tall, not with rigid defiance, but with a natural, effortless grace that spoke of boundless power held in perfect repose. His robes, woven from the same impossible azure, flowed around him as if caught in a perpetual, gentle breeze, subtle gold patterns stitched into the fabric that seemed to shift and reform with every movement. His hair, a vibrant, sun-kissed gold, defied the storm's dampness, standing in an unruly, charismatic mess. But it was his eyes that held the true anomaly, cerulean blue, yet with an inner luminescence that seemed to drink in the surrounding chaos, assessing, understanding, and subtly, almost imperceptibly, calming it. He was Naruto Uzumaki, though the name held no meaning here, in this distant land. Here, he was simply the fifth descender. He landed with the delicate precision of a feather, his bare feet sinking barely an inch into the soaked earth of the cliffside path. The ground beneath him, which had been bucking and groaning under the storm's fury moments before, now lay still, as if holding its breath in his presence. His gaze swept over the landscape, taking in the ravaged terrain of Yoshiori Island, the skeletal serpent, and the oppressive, all-encompassing electro-energy that permeated every molecule of the air. He didn't flinch from it. Instead, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. He murmured, his voice a low rumble, surprisingly gentle amidst the lingering storm. Quite the static feeling. Like a river trying to hold its breath for too long. He extended a hand, palm open, towards the roiling clouds. The remaining lightning bolts, furious and bright, seemed to hesitate, flickering nervously before his outstretched fingers. Then, with a casual flick of his wrist, he didn't repel them, he absorbed them. The raw, crackling electro-energy flowed into his form, not dissipating, but transforming, becoming a part of the azure and gold energy that faintly outlined his body. He sighed contentedly, as if taking a refreshing drink. Heavy, very heavy, all that focus on eternity, it's weighing the very land down. His words, though spoken softly, carried a resonance that traveled beyond the immediate vicinity. In the distance, a patrol unit of the Tenryou Commission, clad in their distinctive crimson and black samurai armor, had been battling the elements, attempting to maintain order amidst the chaos. Lieutenant Hiroki, a gruff, experienced officer, had seen many storms, but never one that parted and then ingested its own lightning. What in the Archon's name was that? Hiroki yelled over the wind, shielding his eyes. His subordinate, a nervous young soldier named Kenji, pointed with a trembling finger. Lieutenant, look, on the cliff, Quote, Hiroki squinted. Through the dissipating storm, he saw the silhouette of a man, seemingly unharmed, standing amidst the ruins, absorbing what should have been a fatal lightning strike. His seasoned mind, trained for combat and the rigid enforcement of the shogun's decrees, struggled to categorize this phenomenon. It wasn't a rogue elemental creature. It wasn't a kairagi. It wasn't even a particularly powerful vision holder. It was something entirely new. And unknown was dangerous. Form up, Hiroki barked, his voice laced with uncharacteristic uncertainty. Advance cautiously. Maintain formation. Report this to General Sarah immediately. Naruto, meanwhile, seemed utterly oblivious to their approach. His cerulean gaze was now fixed on the distant Narukami Island, where the magnificent Tenshukaku, the shogun's abode, stood like a defiant monument to stasis. He felt the immense power emanating from it, a power that resonated with the rigid, unyielding concept of eternity he had intuitively sensed. A mighty concept, he mused aloud, his voice carrying surprising clarity even as the wind began to pick up again, though no longer with the destructive force it had possessed moments ago. But true eternity isn't a stagnant pool, is it? It's the endless river, constantly flowing, changing, adapting. He took a step forward, then another, beginning to walk leisurely along the cliff path, as if on a pleasant morning stroll rather than having just emerged from a rift in reality onto a hostile, storm-ravaged island. The Tenryou Commission soldiers, led by Hiroki, finally reached the edge of the cliff where Naruto had landed. They stopped short, their weapons, polearms, katanas, and bows, held at the ready. Their faces, usually grim and determined, were now a mixture of apprehension and confusion. The storm had receded further, leaving a pervasive dampness and the eerie silence of a landscape recovering from a divine tantrum. Halt, Hiroki commanded, his voice strained. State your identity. You are trespassing on sacred Inazuman soil. Explain your presence and your unusual abilities. Naruto turned, a genuine, easy smile gracing his lips. It wasn't a challenging smile, nor a mocking one, but one of open curiosity and a hint of playful amusement. His eyes, though glowing faintly, held no malice. Identity. Naruto tilted his head, considering the word. You could call me Naruto. As for my presence, well, I merely followed a whisper. A whisper of something beautiful, yet tragically trapped. He gestured vaguely at the lingering electro-energy in the air. Like a magnificent bird, caged by its own gilded bars. Hiroki narrowed his eyes, unimpressed by the poetic language. Gilded bars. What nonsense is this? You defy the very storm itself. You are either a yokai, a rogue vision holder, or a foreign infiltrator. Surrender immediately, and come with us to the Tenryou Commission for questioning. He raised his katana, its polished blade reflecting the dull, recovering light of the sky. Naruto's smile didn't falter. He simply observed the katana, then Hiroki's rigid posture, and the fear in the eyes of the younger soldiers. Surrender. To what, exactly? A concept I haven't quite grasped. He took another step closer, slowly, deliberately. The soldiers instinctively recoiled a step. And as for my abilities, they are simply an understanding. An understanding of how things truly flow. He raised his hand again, but this time, he didn't absorb. He influenced. The very air around them, still thick with residual electro, began to coalesce. Not into aggressive lightning, but into intricate, shimmering patterns of pure energy, dancing around his fingers like benevolent fireflies. The dampness in the air around the soldiers evaporated, leaving them feeling strangely dry and warm. It was a demonstration of control, not power, a subtle flexing of muscles that dwarfed anything they had ever witnessed. See, Naruto said, his voice dropping to a conversational tone. The storm wished to rage. The land wished to settle. There's no contradiction, just a misalignment of intentions. I simply helped them find their rhythm. He lowered his hand, and the shimmering patterns dissolved into nothingness, leaving behind only the clean, fresh scent of rain-washed earth. Hiroki's resolve wavered. His training screamed, threat. But every instinct screamed, unfathomable. He had never faced an opponent who spoke of elemental forces like disobedient children, nor one who demonstrated such control with such casual ease. He glanced at his men. Their grip on their weapons was loosening. Fear was palpable. Just then, the wind, which had been relatively quiet, picked up with a sudden, localized gust, swirling around the cliff edge. It wasn't natural. It was a faint, almost imperceptible shift in the air pressure, a subtle manipulation of the atmospheric elements that only a truly exceptional combatant, attuned to every minute detail of their environment, could detect. It was a warning, or perhaps a test. Naruto's cerulean eyes narrowed, not in alarm, but in interest. He watched the subtle shift in the wind, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in the very earth beneath his feet. He felt a presence, distant but sharp, like a hawk circling far above. Not aggressive, not overtly hostile, but incredibly observant. "Ah," he said, his gaze drifting towards a distant, shadowy outcrop. "It seems someone else is curious." Unbeknownst to Hiroki and his bewildered squad, Kuju Sera, the general of the Tenryou Commission, stood atop a windswept peak miles away, her keen Tengu eyes fixed on the anomaly through specialized spyglass. Her stoic face, usually a mask of unwavering determination, was etched with a rare frown of confusion. "General, the reports are consistent," her aide, a diligent officer named Takashi, reported, his voice tight with apprehension. "The storm was altered. The energy readings are off the charts. Unlike anything we've ever seen. And the individual, he's unlike any vision holder on record." Sarah didn't respond immediately. Her mind, a finely tuned instrument of logic and military strategy, was struggling to process the visual data. She had seen the lightning strikes dissipate into him. She had seen the localized calming of the tempest. Now, she observed him speaking casually to her bewildered soldiers. His aura a serene counterpoint to their rigid fear. His energy signature. "It's not electro," Sarah murmured, her voice a low growl, more to herself than Takashi. "Nor hydro, pyro, anemo, it's all and none. A fundamental distortion." Her grip tightened on the spyglass. "He's manipulating the very fabric of the elements. Not through a vision, but instinctively." She watched as Naruto took another step, then paused, turning his head as if sensing her distant gaze. A shiver, cold and alien, ran down Sarah's spine. He wasn't looking at her location directly, but she felt as if he saw her. Knew she was there, observing. It was an unnerving, almost unsettling, certainty. "Maintain remote observation," Sarah ordered, her voice regaining its crisp authority. "Do not engage directly unless provoked. I need more information. This, Naruto, is a variable of unknown magnitude. And variables are dangerous to Inazuma's eternity." Back on the cliff, Naruto chuckled softly. "Well, then, it seems I've made an impression, both up close and from afar." He turned back to Hiroki, his smile broadening. "So, rather than surrendering to a concept I don't understand, perhaps you could explain it to me. This eternity, that seems to be suffocating this beautiful land." Hiroki, still reeling from the display of elemental control, found himself momentarily speechless. The man wasn't just powerful. He was genuinely curious, and oddly unthreatening despite his obvious might. This wasn't how threats behaved. Inazuma's eternity is the divine will of the almighty Shogun. Hiroki finally managed to stammer out, clutching his katana tighter. "It is an unwavering path, a timeless state of peace and order, free from the fleeting impermanence of mortal desires and ambitions. It is protected by the Sakoku Decree and enforced by the Vision Hunt Decree." Naruto's smile softened, losing its playful edge and gaining a hint of sadness. He looked out at the vast, stormy ocean, then up at the still darkening sky. Peace and order, achieved through stagnation, through the suppression of individual sparks. He shook his head slowly. "A caged bird might be peaceful, unthreatened by predators. But it will never truly fly. It will never sing its true song." He took a deep breath, and as he exhaled, a visible wave of his azure and gold energy rippled outwards. It wasn't aggressive. Instead, it was like a cleansing breath. The oppressive, heavy electro energy in the immediate vicinity of the cliff began to recede, replaced by a lighter, fresher atmosphere. The air felt cleaner, easier to breathe. The plants around them seemed to perk up, their leaves gaining a subtle vibrancy. Even the lingering metallic tang of ozone faded, replaced by the earthy scent of rain and growing life. "The land feels tired," Naruto continued, his voice resonating with an empathy that surprised even himself. He was a descender, an anomaly, a being who had traversed countless realities, but this place, Inazuma, spoke to a part of him that resonated with life and growth. He felt the pain, the suppression, the yearning for change. Like it's holding its breath, waiting for something to give. And a forced eternity is no eternity at all. True eternity is endless motion, endless evolution, endless life. He then did something truly unexpected. He reached into his robes and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden bird. No larger than his palm. With a casual flick of his thumb, he breathed a faint, golden light into it. The bird, instead of remaining inert wood, suddenly fluttered its wings, a faint, ethereal chirping sound emanating from it. It rose into the air, circled Naruto's head once, then darted off towards the distant Narukami Island, a shimmering golden speck against the bruised sky. "Go on," Naruto whispered to the vanishing bird, his voice filled with a profound sense of purpose. "Sing your song. Remind them what it means to fly." Hiroki and his men stared, dumbfounded. A wooden bird, brought to life by something. Their minds struggled to comprehend. This was not combat. This was not diplomacy. This was magic beyond their understanding. What was that? Kenji, the young soldier, whispered, fear giving way to awe. Naruto simply smiled. A message, a gentle suggestion, nothing more. He turned back to the cliff, his gaze once again fixed on the distant Tenshukaku. "And now, if you'll excuse me, I have a few more observations to make. Perhaps this almighty Shogun will appreciate a fresh perspective on her eternity." He took another step, then another, beginning to walk leisurely along the path leading away from the cliff, heading towards the heart of the island. He left behind a group of Tenryou Commission soldiers who were utterly bewildered. Their rigid training and unquestioning loyalty shaken to their core. They didn't pursue him. They couldn't. Their very understanding of the world had been fractured by the man named Naruto. Miles away, within the serene, isolated expanse of the plain of Eutimia, a realm meticulously constructed by the Electro-Archon, Raiden, to achieve her perfect, unchanging eternity, a subtle tremor ran through the ethereal landscape. In her contemplative state, perceived it as a dissonant hum, a single, discordant note in her perfectly orchestrated silence. She had sensed the anomalous energy signature earlier, the one that defied classification, the one that had disrupted the natural flow of her storm. Now, that hum had intensified, becoming a quiet, persistent thrum against the very fabric of her carefully constructed reality. Then, a flicker, a minute, almost imperceptible disruption in the otherwise seamless flow of her consciousness. It was the briefest image, a fleeting impression not unlike a dream. A man of vibrant gold and azure, standing on a storm-lashed cliff, his eyes a penetrating blue, and a faint, sad smile gracing his lips as he spoke of a magnificent bird, caged by its own gilded bars. A being of immense power and millennia of experience, immediately dismissed it as an errant thought, a residual echo of the mortal realm's chaotic impermanence. Her eternity was perfect. Her will was absolute. There was no room for such deviations. But as Naruto walked further into Yashiori Island, his presence continued to hum, a subtle but undeniable counter-melody to A's unchanging symphony. He healed a small, blighted patch of ground with a mere touch, revitalizing the plants. He gently guided a lost and frightened Naku weed spirit back to its patch. He was a force of vibrant, living change. And his arrival was already subtly altering the ley lines, confusing the Shogun's consciousness with an increasingly persistent, undeniable anomaly. As the sun began its descent, painting the recovering sky in hues of bruised purple and fiery orange, Naruto stood atop a gentle hill overlooking a village shrouded in the long shadows of the evening. He could feel the weight of the vision hunt decree here, the muted sorrow, the suppressed dreams. He saw a land beautiful but broken, yearning for a freedom it barely remembered. He closed his eyes, taking in a deep, cleansing breath. When he opened them, the golden luminescence in his eyes had intensified, becoming a beacon of defiant warmth in the fading light. He looked directly towards the distant Tenshukaku, now a dark, imposing silhouette against the last vestiges of twilight. He spoke, not to the villagers below, nor to the departing patrol, but to the very concept of eternity that permeated the land. "I have seen many worlds, many truths, many definitions of power," Naruto's voice rang out, clear and unwavering, cutting through the settling evening air. "But true power, true eternity, is never found in stasis. It is found in life, in growth, in the endless, beautiful dance of change. He spread his arms wide, embracing the encroaching night and the promise of a new dawn. And I am here to remind you, Inazuma. To remind your people, and to challenge the very core of your stillness. A single, golden wooden bird, guided by an invisible will, continued its silent flight towards Narukami Island, a tiny, defiant harbinger against the encroaching night. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Whispering Kitsune and the Shogun's Shadow. The azure anomaly of Yashiori Island quickly became the most tantalizing whisper in Inazuma. A forbidden story passed in hushed tones through teahouses, street markets, and, most potently, the hallowed halls of the Grand Narukami Shrine. For Yae Miko, the Guji of the shrine and the head shrine maiden, such whispers were her preferred currency, far more valuable than mora or mere political gossip. Perched elegantly on a cushion in her personal chambers, a steaming cup of freshly brewed sakura tea untouched beside her, she listened intently to the agitated reports from her shrine maidens. He calmed the storm, Guji, and then absorbed the lightning. One maiden, a young woman named Kyoko, recounted, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and wonder, and spoke of gilded cages and suffocating stillness. When questioned by the Tenryo Commission Patrol, another added, her voice barely a breath. Lieutenant Hiroki's report was incoherent. He mentioned a golden wooden bird that flew towards Narukami Island. Yae Miko's lips, usually curved in a knowing, mischievous smile, flattened for a moment. This was no ordinary disturbance. This was a disruption, a variable of profound, delicious unpredictability. Her long, pink hair, adorned with intricate ornaments, shimmered in the soft light filtering through the temple's paper screens. Her violet eyes, typically sparkling with hidden mirth, were now sharp, analytical, like a predator assessing a fascinating new prey. A golden wooden bird, you say? Yae Miko purred, her voice a low, melodious hum that always carried a hint of hidden meaning. How poetic, and quite impudent. He challenges A's very concept of eternity, yet sends her a child's trinket. She chuckled, a soft, dry sound that was more intellectual amusement than genuine mirth. This Naruto, he certainly possesses an unparalleled flair for the dramatic, doesn't he? Her mind, quick as a flash of lightning and intricate as the most complex narrative, began to spin possibilities. Her dear friend, had retreated further into the plane of euthymia. Her pursuit of unyielding eternity bordering on a pathological obsession. Inazuma itself had become stagnant, its people suffocating under the decrees, its vibrant culture slowly fading. Yae Miko, with her millennia of observation, knew that true life, true strength, lay in adaptation and flow. This Naruto could be the catalyst Inazuma desperately needed, or a dangerously powerful fool. Either way, he was undoubtedly interesting. He is currently making his way towards Narukami Island, avoiding all major patrols, yet seemingly appearing wherever discontent is strongest, Kyoko reported. Referring to recent, increasingly frequent, albeit minor, disruptions to supply lines and tax collections across Inazuma. Yae Miko's smile returned, broader now. Intriguing. He's not simply a destructive force. He's a disruptor of stagnation. An artisan of chaos, perhaps. Or perhaps, something more. She rose with an elegant rustle of her shrine maiden robes, her fox ears twitching almost imperceptibly. Kyoko, prepare a special offering at the sacred Sakura. And fetch me that ancient text on prophetic dreams, the one with the particularly obscure meta. Furs about, the azure stranger and the crimson cage. She paused at the doorway, turning back with a glint in her eyes. And send word to the Kamisato clan. A particularly rare tea blend has arrived at the shrine. I'm certain Ayaka would appreciate an invitation. It was a subtle web she wove, pulling strings no one else even knew existed. Meanwhile, Naruto was indeed making his way across Inazuma, not through brute force, but with a nuanced understanding of its energy flows. He wasn't tracking paths or maps, he was following the emotional currents of the land. He felt the heavy despair clinging to the impoverished villages, the quiet rage simmering in the hearts of those who had lost their visions, the desperate hope clinging to isolated resistance cells. He didn't intervene overtly, instead, he acted like a gentle current, subtly redirecting, subtly empowering. He saw a group of Tenryou commissioned soldiers confiscating a fisherman's meager catch, leaving the old man's face a mask of weary resignation. Naruto didn't confront them. Instead, as the soldiers marched away, he casually brushed against a hidden crevice in the rocks. A shimmering, almost invisible ripple of his etheric resonance flowed into the earth, causing a hidden, previously barren tide pool to suddenly surge with a surprising bounty of fresh, plump fish. The old fisherman, returning dejectedly, gasped, then wept tears of disbelief and gratitude. Naruto merely smiled, a fleeting shadow, and moved on, leaving an unexplainable miracle in his wake. He witnessed a young artist, his vision confiscated, staring at his blank canvas with hollow eyes. His once vibrant spirit extinguished. As Naruto passed, a stray gust of wind, oddly warm and carrying the scent of distant cherry blossoms, seemed to whisper encouragement. A vibrant streak of color, impossible, ethereal, like a fragment of a rainbow, shimmered across the artist's blank canvas for a fraction of a second, igniting a forgotten spark in his eyes. The artist picked up his brush, a new resolve in his gaze. Naruto continued walking, a silent catalyst. Such small, seemingly insignificant acts, however, were not going unnoticed. Yae Miko, with her vast network of shrine maidens, informants, and even a few strategically placed kitsune familiars, received these reports with growing fascination. The Azure Anomaly wasn't causing overt rebellion, nor was he engaging in widespread destruction. He was doing something far more insidious to the Shogun's eternity. He was reigniting hope. He was cultivating change in the quietest, most fundamental ways. He doesn't confront directly, does he? Yae Miko mused to herself, watching a distant, shimmering distortion on her specially attuned mirror, a visual representation of Naruto's etheric resonance. He simply corrects, like a master craftsman smoothing out a flaw in a masterpiece. Oh, you may have met your match. Or your salvation. Her strategy shifted. Instead of merely observing, she decided to guide him. Not towards a direct confrontation yet, but towards an environment where she could truly assess his nature. And where better than the Grand Narukami Shrine itself? It was a place of spiritual power, of ancient secrets, and most importantly, a place where she held undeniable sway. Yae Miko orchestrated a series of seemingly coincidental events. A particularly charming street performer, secretly one of her kitsune familiars in disguise, accidentally bumped into Naruto, engaging him in a lively, distracting conversation. During their interaction, the performer Tly mentioned the tranquility and spiritual insight to be found at the Grand Narukami Shrine, hinting at ancient lore that might interest a traveler of profound spiritual sensitivity. Meanwhile, a sudden, localized downpour, inexplicable given the clearing skies, steered Naruto's path directly towards the main road leading up Mt. Yugo. The shrine maidens, pre-warned, were then, coincidentally, heading down the path, inviting him to take shelter and partake in the shrine's hospitality. Naruto, sensing the subtle manipulation, merely chuckled. He recognized the delicate touch of a master orchestrator. He could have bypassed all of it, but where was the fun in that? The energy signature of this orchestrator was unique, playful, cunning, and intelligent, yet with an underlying layer of profound sadness. Like someone burdened by long-held secrets, he allowed himself to be guided, his golden wooden bird, which had returned to perch on his shoulder, silently observing with its ethereal eyes. He finally arrived at the Grand Narukami Shrine, a magnificent edifice of traditional Inazuman architecture, nestled amidst ancient trees and vibrant cherry blossoms. The air here was different, it thrummed with a sacred energy. Old and profound, it was a place of reverence, but also, Naruto sensed, a place of subtle manipulation, like a grand puppet theater where the strings were invisible. As he entered the main courtyard, a figure emerged from the central shrine building. She was breathtaking, elegant, with flowing pink hair, sharp, intelligent violet eyes, and a knowing smile that seemed to see right through him. She wore the traditional attire of a shrine maiden, yet carried herself with an air of regal authority and an undeniable aura of playful mischief. This was the orchestrator. This was Yae Miko. Welcome, esteemed traveler. Yae Miko's voice was like silk, smooth and enticing. We do not often receive visitors who arrive quite so unceremoniously. The winds of fate, it seems, blow strongly in your direction today. She gestured towards a traditional low table set with exquisite tea and pastries in a quiet corner of the courtyard, bathed in the soft, ambient light of the setting sun. Perhaps you would care to enlighten this humble Guji on the nature of your whisper. Naruto approached, his customary easy smile on his face. He sat cross-legged opposite her, his golden wooden bird taking flight and perching on a nearby cherry tree branch, its ethereal chirping mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves. A pleasure, Guji, Naruto replied, his voice calm and direct, cutting through her subtle layers of formality and veiled questions. Though I suspect you already know a good deal about my whisper. After all, you've been quite the diligent listener, haven't you, Kitsune? Yae Miko's smile didn't falter, but a flicker of genuine surprise, quickly masked, passed through her eyes. To be seen through so easily, and by a complete stranger, was a rare experience. She poured him a cup of tea, the fragrant steam rising between them. Oh, a perceptive one, are we? She purred, taking a delicate sip from her own cup. Most would be too distracted by the majesty of the shrine, or perhaps the allure of its Guji, to notice such subtleties. But then again, you are no ordinary traveler, are you? One who commands the elements without a vision, who pacifies storms with a mere thought, and who crafts living trinkets from mere wood. Her gaze was piercing. Tell me, Naruto, what are you? Naruto took a sip of the tea. Its warmth spread through him, subtly complementing his own etheric energy. I am many things, Guji. A wanderer, a seeker of truths, and sometimes, an irritant to those who cling too tightly to their own definitions of reality. He set the cup down. As for what I am, I suppose you could say I'm a force for change. And I sense this land, your Inazuma, is crying out for it. It feels stuck. Yae Miko leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious, though the playful glint never quite left her eyes. Stuck, you say? A believes she has forged a perfect eternity, a shield against the impermanence that brought her such sorrow. Do you truly believe stagnation is the alternative to chaos? Naruto met her gaze, his own unwavering. Eternity isn't stillness, Guji. It's the continuous flow of becoming. The river is eternal because it always moves, always changes its course, always replenishes itself. If it tries to hold its form, it becomes a stagnant pond, and eventually, it dies. He gestured vaguely towards the distant Tenshukaku. Your archon has built a dam. A very powerful one, but even the mightiest dams will eventually crack under the pressure of the river's true nature. Yae Miko's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. This man wasn't just powerful, he was insightful, and his philosophical understanding of eternity challenged A's worldview with a poetic elegance that resonated with her own Kitsune nature. A bold claim, she murmured, a genuine smile now forming on her lips. And how do you propose to dismantle such a formidable dam? With brute force. Naruto chuckled, a warm, genuine sound. Brute force is often clumsy, Guji, and messy. No, I prefer precision. A gentle nudge here, a subtle redirection there. And sometimes, he picked up a delicate wagashi pastry from the plate, examining its intricate design. Sometimes, a reminder of what has been forgotten. He took a bite, savoring the sweetness. Besides, I doubt your archon is truly impermeable to reason. She's just lonely, and burdened by a truly tragic past. Yae Miko froze, the very air around her chilling. Naruto had hit a nerve, a deeply personal wound that very few knew existed. Her smile vanished, replaced by a look of sharp, defensive scrutiny. You speak with great presumption, stranger. And great insight. You claim to understand my dearest friend after a mere glance. Not a glance, Guji, Naruto corrected, his tone gentle, devoid of judgment. A feeling. Her presence is immense, yes, but also incredibly isolated. Like a singular note held for too long, losing its melody. He looked directly into her eyes. And you, Guji, are a symphony trapped behind a playful facade. You hide your burdens well, but the sadness still hums beneath the wit. Yae Miko stared at him, truly seen for the first time in centuries. He wasn't trying to charm her, or manipulate her, he was simply seeing her. It was unsettling, and incredibly, profoundly, alluring. Her mind, usually so adept at controlling every situation, found itself at a loss. You Are dangerous, Naruto, she finally said, her voice unusually quiet, stripped of its usual layers. Not in the way the Tenryou Commission perceives, but dangerous to the very foundations of what has been. Naruto merely smiled, a genuine, radiating warmth that filled the air. Perhaps, or perhaps, I'm simply the wind that stirs the stagnant waters. The choice, ultimately, belongs to the river itself. And to the one who built the dam. He rose from the table, his movements fluid and graceful. Thank you for the tea, Guji. It was enlightening. Yae Miko watched him, mesmerized, as he began to walk away. Towards the main path leading down from Mt. Yugo, directly towards Inazuma City. Her eyes followed his departing figure, a new, intense curiosity burning within them. He was not just a powerful anomaly, he was a profound, empathic presence, capable of seeing beyond the surface, directly into the heart of things. He goes directly to Tenshukaku now, then. Kyoko whispered, having returned to observe discreetly. Yae Miko's eyes narrowed, a plan forming rapidly in her mind. No, not yet. He will follow the currents he himself creates. The whispers of the people, the distress of the land, they will guide him. She knew that a direct, unprovoked assault on Tenshukaku would brand him a purely destructive force, making any future cooperation with impossible. No, Naruto needed to build a reputation, a narrative, before the final confrontation. Send word to the resistance on Watatsumi Island, Yae Miko instructed, her voice regaining its usual crispness. Though with a new underlying excitement. Tell them of the Azure Harbinger, and his subtle acts of defiance. Tell them a new hope has arrived. And also, spread rumors within the Tenryou Commission that this, Naruto, is specifically targeting the Vision Hunt Decree, undermining its authority. She watched Naruto's golden wooden bird, still perched on the cherry tree, its tiny ethereal form glowing faintly. Let the threads intertwine. Let the story unfold. This, my dear Kyoko, is going to be far more interesting than any of my Fox novels. Meanwhile, within the desolate, ethereal expanse of the plain of Eutimia, the Raiden Shogun, or rather, the puppet construct animated by A's will, stood motionless. Her internal processes, usually perfectly stable, had been registering subtle, yet persistent disruptions since the Azure anomaly arrived. The hum was no longer just a hum, it was a rhythmic pulse, a vibrant counterbeat against her perfect, static eternity. And then, a new sensation. A faint, almost imperceptible presence within the plane itself, probing, assessing. It was the residue of Naruto's earlier shared moment with Yae Miko, his empathy touching upon the hidden sorrow within the kitsune. And that empathy subtly echoing within the plane of Eutimia, because A's consciousness was, in a way, still intricately linked to the collective emotional resonance of Inazuma. A new image flickered into A's mind, sharper this time. The man, Naruto, standing not on the cliff, but in a serene temple courtyard, speaking of dams and stagnant ponds, his eyes filled with a wisdom that transcended her own. He spoke of loneliness and tragic pasts with an unsettling accuracy. For millennia, A had sought to protect Inazuma from the agonizing impermanence that had claimed her loved ones. She had severed herself from the ebb and flow of emotions, embracing a static eternity she believed was unassailable. But this, Naruto, was a living contradiction to her ideal. He was change, he was empathy, he was flow, and he was strong, unfathomably strong. The Shogun puppet, reacting to A's unconscious mental directives, stirred. Its eyes, usually devoid of expression, pulsed with a faint, crimson light. Its left hand, clad in intricate armor, slowly clenched into a fist. A's internal monologue, usually a serene reaffirmation of eternity, became subtly disturbed. An anomaly, a variable, he challenges the very essence of my will. He speaks of loneliness. Impossible. Eternity is absolute. Emotions are weakness. Yet, the faint, golden wooden bird, propelled by Naruto's subtle command, finally reached Narukami Island. It flew past the grand Narukami shrine, its faint chirping unheard by mortal ears, and continued its silent journey straight towards Tenshukaku. It didn't crash into the formidable barriers surrounding the shogun's abode. Instead, it shimmered, becoming a wisp of golden light that effortlessly passed through the wards, through the walls. ND settled gently on the armrest of the Raiden Shogun puppet's throne. For a moment, the golden light pulsed, and a faint, ethereal chirping echoed in the silence of the throne room. The Raiden Shogun puppet, its eyes still pulsing crimson, seemed to register its presence. The small, wooden bird, an impossible message of change, rested defiant against the very symbol of unwavering eternity. Naruto, having reached the outskirts of Inazuma City, looked back towards the distant Tenshukaku. A subtle ripple of golden energy emanated from him, a sense of having successfully delivered his message. He knew the challenge had been issued, not with thunder and lightning, but with a whisper and a song. He smiled, a genuine, excited grin, as if embarking on the grandest adventure. Let's see how absolute your eternity truly is, Almighty Shogun, he murmured, his voice a low, confident hum. He then turned and walked towards the bustling, yet burdened, heart of Inazuma City, ready for the next act in his grand disruption. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Echoes of Eternity, the First Standoff. The air within Tenshukaku, the Raiden Shogun's personal domain, wasn't merely thick, it was a physical manifestation of absolute will. So dense with electro-energy it felt like breathing solidified lightning. Every shadow seemed to hum with silent power, every polished surface reflecting the cold, unwavering light of an eternity forged in isolation. The vast throne room, usually an echo chamber of stark silence, now thrummed with a low, building hum, a precursor to an inevitable storm. The very statues of forgotten heroes lining the walls seemed to hold their breath, sensing the profound shift in the static equilibrium. And then, he walked in. Not through the grand, heavily guarded main entrance, but through a shimmer of distorted space. Appearing as effortlessly as a thought manifesting into reality, Naruto Uzumaki, his azure robes a vibrant, defiant counterpoint to the monochromatic solemnity, stepped onto the polished floor. His presence was a shockwave of vibrant, adaptive energy, a living contradiction to the rigid, absolute, eternity, that permeated every particle of the chamber. The golden wooden bird, no longer on his shoulder, dissolved into a faint shimmer of light, its message delivered. Before him, on a raised dais, sat the Raiden Shogun puppet, an imposing figure of martial perfection. Its eyes, usually a dull, vacant purple, now glowed with an intense, crimson light, a direct conduit for the observing consciousness of Raiden A from within the plane of Eutemia. Around the throne, Kuju Sera, general of the Tenryo Commission, stood flanked by two elite samurai, their postures rigid with unwavering loyalty, their hands resting on their sheathed blades. Sera's usually stoic expression was a mask of tense anticipation, her gaze fixed on the man who had effortlessly bypassed every security measure. Her mind replayed the reports from Yashiori Island, the utter bewilderment of her soldiers, and now this audacious, direct intrusion. Intruder, the Raiden Shogun puppet's voice resonated through the chamber, a cold, synthesized pronouncement, devoid of any discernible emotion. It was the voice of absolute authority, unyielding and unassailable. You have violated the sanctity of Tenshukaku. You have challenged the divine will of the Almighty Shogun. State your purpose, mortal, before you face the consequence of your defiance. Naruto surveyed the scene with an unreadable expression. His gaze swept over the Shogun puppet, then to Sera, whose internal conflict he subtly sensed, the duty battling with a nascent, unfamiliar awe. He finally met the glowing crimson eyes of the puppet, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. Mortal, huh? Naruto mused aloud, his voice surprisingly calm, almost conversational, in the face of such overwhelming power. A curious term for one who merely seeks to understand. My purpose, Almighty Shogun, is simple. I am here to discuss eternity. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, his azure energy pulsing faintly around him, almost dancing in defiance of the oppressive electro. Yours, specifically, because I sense a grave misunderstanding. Kuju Sera stiffened. Silence. You dare to question the Shogun's divine wisdom. Her hand instinctively moved to her katana hilt. Her duty was clear. Protect her Archon's will. Defend her absolute authority. Yet, a sliver of the earlier awe remained, a ghost of the powerful anomaly she had witnessed on Yashiori Island. The Raiden Shogun puppet remained motionless, its crimson eyes fixed on Naruto. Then, with a chillingly precise motion, its right hand slowly unsheathed the Musou Ishin from its chest, the blade appearing from thin air, humming with destructive electro-energy. The air around it crackled, lightning manifesting as raw, untamed power. Understanding is an impermanence, the Shogun stated, its voice growing marginally louder, the synthesized tones deepening. It implies change, deviation. Eternity requires absolute stillness. No deviation. No compromise. You represent deviation. Therefore, you must be purged. With those words, the puppet moved. Not with the raw force of a charging warrior, but with the terrifying grace of a perfectly engineered machine designed for absolute annihilation. The Musou Ishin, crackling with pure electro, became a blur. Appearing directly before Naruto in an instant, aimed directly at his heart. This was the Musou no Hitodachi, the strike of ultimate judgment, meant to sever all connections to the mortal world. To erase existence itself. Naruto didn't flinch. He didn't raise a guard. He didn't dodge in the conventional sense. Instead, at the very nanosecond the blade was to connect, his form shimmered, not disappearing, but becoming less solid. The Musou Ishin, intended to cleave through reality, passed through him as if he were made of light and mist. No, not mist. Pure energy. It was a manipulation of his own physical form, transforming it into a waveform that defied conventional contact. The blade, having passed through him, created a searing gouge in the polished floor behind him, leaving a smoking, superheated scar that would last for eternity. Sarah gasped, an involuntary sound of shock escaping her usually controlled lips. Her eyes widened, witnessing an impossibility. No one, absolutely no one, had ever withstood the Musou no Hitodachi. Not even avoided it with such ethereal effortlessness. Naruto reappeared a foot to the side, his form solidifying once more, completely unharmed. His expression calm, almost serene. Interesting, he remarked, his voice devoid of any triumph or provocation, simply analytical. A beautiful blade, impeccable execution, but too absolute. It doesn't flow, it merely seeks to break. The Shogun puppet registered the anomaly. Its crimson eyes pulsed faster. Impossible. All entities yield to the Musou no Hitodachi. All existence bows before absolute severance. Within the plane of euthymia, A's consciousness, usually serene and isolated, registered a profound disturbance. The dissonant hum, from before intensified, oming a jarring clang against her inner peace. She actively, consciously, directed the puppet to adjust. The Shogun attacked again, this time with a blinding flurry of strikes, each one infused with the raw power of electro. Designed to overwhelm, to leave no space for escape. Lightning crackled from its form, manifesting as bolts of pure destruction, targeting Naruto from every angle. Naruto responded not with defense, but with redirection. He didn't block, he shifted the very currents of energy. A sweeping slash of the Musou Ishin, instead of hitting him, seemed to bend around him, its trajectory subtly altered, causing it to slice through a column beside him instead. A lightning bolt, aimed squarely at his chest, suddenly curved midair, harmlessly striking the wall behind him. He wasn't simply avoiding, he was influencing the path of the electro-energy itself, using its own principles against it, like a master conductor turning a furious symphony into a gentle melody. You channel the very essence of electro. Almighty Shogun, Naruto explained, his voice still calm, almost as if giving a lecture amidst the maelstrom of destruction. He deflected another strike with a casual wave of his hand, sending a ripple of golden energy through the blade itself, causing it to vibrate harmlessly. But you wield it as a bludgeon, not as a living current. Electro is flux, it is potential. It is the spark of creation and the flash of revelation. It is not just about power, it is about flow. He then did something even more astonishing. As the Shogun launched a devastating, wide-arc electro burst, Naruto didn't dodge. He stood his ground, extending both hands, palms open. The massive wave of electro-energy rushed towards him, but instead of impacting, it seemed to flow into his hands, like water into an open cup. It wasn't absorbed, it was repurposed. The electro-energy, instead of remaining violent and destructive, shimmered, becoming pure, unadulterated energy, swirling around his hands like a miniature galaxy of vibrant, purple light. You isolate yourself in eternity, Naruto continued, his voice taking on a tone of profound, almost mournful, understanding. Because you fear loss. You fear the impermanence that change brings. But in isolating yourself, you have also isolated your people. And your power. True strength lies not in clinging to what is, but in embracing what can be. With a gentle, almost tender motion, Naruto cupped the swirling electro-energy in his hands. He then, with a subtle shift of his own etheric resonance, began to change it. The violent purple began to soften, swirling into gentler hues of lavender, then white, then a shimmering, almost crystalline blue. The crackling sounds ceased, replaced by a soft, melodic hum. This was no longer just a fight. It was a clash of philosophies, a duel of ideals. And Naruto was winning not by raw power, but by demonstrating a superior understanding of power itself. Inside the plane of Eutimia, Raiden A's consciousness was in turmoil. She had never encountered such a phenomenon. Every attack, every concept she had perfected, was not merely countered, but redefined by this anomaly. He was not just strong. He was fundamentally different. He saw weaknesses not in her power, but in her philosophy. He spoke of her fears, her isolation, with an accuracy that was unsettling. He changes my very essence, A thought. Her inner voice disturbed. He does not destroy it, he reshapes it. Impossible. My eternity is absolute. It cannot be redefined. Yet, the evidence was before her. The puppet was still functional. But the pure electro-energy, the very essence of her being, was being twisted, softened, made different by his touch. Sarah, witnessing this impossible transformation of the Shogun's power, felt a dizzying shift in her worldview. Her unwavering loyalty was built on the foundation of the Shogun's absolute, unassailable power. But this man, he had simply rearranged it. He wasn't destroying, he was healing. The thought was jarring, almost blasphemous. Yet, she saw the softened, purified electro-energy in his hands, so different from the harsh, destructive force she was accustomed to. Naruto, sensing A's growing confusion and the slight tremor in the puppet's stance, decided to press his advantage, not with force, but with a profound, empathic gesture. He gently extended his hands, holding the now shimmering, benevolent sphere of electro-energy towards the puppet. "This is your power, almighty Shogun," Naruto said, his voice imbued with a rare, profound earnestness. "But it has been constrained, limited by your fear. Open yourself to its true nature, to its ability to change, to adapt, to nurture, not just to sever." He then, with a careful, deliberate motion, guided the shimmering sphere of purified electro towards the puppet's chest, directly where the Musou Ishin had rested moments before. The puppet stiffened, its crimson eyes flickering wildly. It was receiving conflicting directives from A's internal struggle: resist this impurity, or engage with this unknown phenomenon. For a moment, silence descended upon the throne room, broken only by the faint hum of the purified electro. Kuju Sarah and her men watched, breathless, unsure whether to intervene, unsure of what they were even witnessing. Then, the shimmering sphere touched the puppet's chest. Instead of an explosion, or a violent rejection, the energy flowed inward, not dissipating, but integrating. The crimson glow in the puppet's eyes flickered, then dimmed, replaced by a soft, almost ethereal purple. The rigid posture of the Shogun puppet softened minutely, its shoulders relaxing by a fraction of an inch. Its hands, which had been clenched, uncurled slightly. Within the plane of Eutimia, Raiden A felt a sensation unlike any she had experienced since the cataclysm. Not pain, not sorrow, but a profound, almost overwhelming release. The static pressure she had maintained for centuries, the iron grip on her own power, suddenly eased. The pure, revitalized electro-energy, guided by Naruto, flowed into her deepest being, not altering her core, but reminding her of a flexibility, a vibrancy, she had long suppressed. It was as if a deafening, constant hum had suddenly been replaced by a beautiful, resonant chord. For a brief, jarring moment, A's consciousness, unburdened by the usual stoicism, found itself directly interfacing with Naruto's. There was no telepathic conversation, no exchange of words, only a pure, unadulterated transfer of understanding. He showed her, through the subtle resonance of his etheric energy, what true, living eternity felt like: the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, the beauty of impermanence, the strength found in adaptation, not in rigidity. He showed her the suffering of her people, not as mere statistics, but as raw, emotional echoes that resonated with her own buried grief. The experience lasted only a fraction of a second. But it was enough to shatter centuries of meticulously maintained isolation. When the connection severed, the Raiden Shogun puppet stood motionless, its eyes now a serene, soft purple. The Musou is. Shin remained unsheathed but hung loosely in its hand, its destructive aura completely vanished. It was not defeated, not destroyed. It was recalibrated. Naruto took a step back, his expression still calm, but now with a hint of quiet satisfaction. There, he said, his voice gentle. Much better. The river flows again. Kuju Sara stared, her mind reeling. The almighty Shogun, her unyielding, absolute archon, had been changed. Not by force, but by a subtle, incomprehensible act of spiritual communion. The puppet was still standing, still powerful, but the oppressive aura was gone, replaced by a serene, almost contemplative stillness. It was a victory, but one achieved by means she couldn't even begin to grasp. Her absolute certainty in the Shogun's unwavering path had been irrevocably shattered. A seed of profound questioning, bordering on rebellion, had been planted deep within her soul. Naruto turned to leave, walking towards the shimmering distortion that marked his entrance. He didn't look back at the puppet, nor at the bewildered Sara. His mission in Tenshukaku was, for now, complete. Within the plane of Eutimia, Raiden remained silent, motionless. Her mind, no longer serene, was a maelstrom of conflicting emotions and unprecedented insights. The images Naruto had shown her, the feeling of true, living eternity, the echoing sorrow of her people, it was all too much, yet profoundly, terrifyingly, real. Her centuries of isolation had been a fragile shield, and Naruto had simply walked through it. She was not angry, she was shaken. Profoundly so. For the first time in an age, she felt the stirring of uncertainty, and with it, a faint, almost imperceptible spark of curiosity, bordering on fascination, for the anomalous man who had dared to challenge her very being, not with violence, but with understanding. She looked upon her puppet, now standing in serene stillness, its eyes a gentle purple. It was a mirror of her own changed state. The concept of eternity had been absolute. Now, it had a new, vibrant, terrifying variable. Naruto stepped back through the shimmering spatial distortion, vanishing as abruptly as he had appeared. He left behind a Tenshukaku transformed, a general utterly bewildered, and an archon's very soul irrevocably stirred. The stillness of eternity had been broken. The first standoff had concluded, not with a roar of triumph, but with the quiet, profound sound of a paradigm shifting. The seeds of change, sown by the fifth descender, were already beginning to bloom. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. Whispers of Rebellion and the Strategist's Gaze. The subtle ripple created by the azure anomaly in Tenshukaku did not go unnoticed across Inazuma. While the official reports from the Tenryou Commission were suspiciously vague, S.P. E.A. King of a minor breach, swiftly contained, the undercurrents of rumor and observation were far more precise. Tales spread like wildfire. A stranger who moved like mist, who absorbed lightning, W. Ho dared to speak of the Shogun's eternity, not as divine truth, but as a cage. More importantly, there were accounts of the Raiden Shogun herself, or at least her formidable puppet, having been altered. Not broken, but softened. Its oppressive aura subtly lifted, its crimson eyes now a placid lavender. Such news, even as a whisper, was a beacon in the storm for those who yearned for change. On Watatsumi Island, a hidden bastion of vibrant coral and lush, bioluminescent greenery, far removed from the oppressive uniformity of Narukami, the rumors were received with a mixture of cautious hope and intellectual skepticism. Here, in the heart of the resistance against the Vision Hunt Decree and the Sakoku Decree, resided Sangonomiya Kokomi, the divine priestess of Watatsumi Island and the astute leader of the rebellion. She sat in her command tent, a temporary structure woven from natural fibers and illuminated by glowing, deep-sea flora, studying a meticulously drawn map of Inazuma. Around her, members of the Sangonomiya army moved with quiet purpose, their faces etched with the weariness of prolonged conflict. Another report, Divine Priestess, her aide, Guro, a fiercely loyal and straightforward general, stated. His brow furrowed with concern as he presented a rolled parchment. From a merchant network sympathetic to our cause. They corroborate the tales from Narukami Island. An individual, highly powerful, calling himself Naruto, challenged the Shogun directly. And he was not defeated. The Shogun puppet is said to be different. Kokomi took the parchment, her delicate fingers tracing the elegant script. Her appearance belied her formidable intellect. She possessed the ethereal beauty of a water spirit, with flowing pink hair that resembled coral and eyes the color of the deep ocean. Often appearing fragile, yet, within those serene eyes lay a mind like a polished diamond, sharp, analytical, and capable of seeing patterns no one else could. She was a master strategist, a scholar of war, whose mind processed countless variables before arriving at a single, elegant solution. She read the report, her serene expression unwavering. Absorbed lightning, spoke of a suffocating stillness, recalibrated the Archon's very essence. She murmured, her voice a soft, melodic flow, like water cascading over smooth stones. Her gaze drifted to a complex star chart on the tent wall. Plotting celestial movements. A fascinating anomaly, but an anomaly nonetheless. Divine Priestess, if these rumors are true, Garo began, his tail wagging slightly with barely contained hope. Could he be the turning point we desperately need? A powerful ally to turn the tide against the Shogun? Kokomi sighed, a barely perceptible ripple on the calm surface of her composure. Hope is a dangerous commodity, Garo. It can fuel courage, but also blind us to harsh realities. A single powerful individual, no matter how potent, rarely decides the fate of a nation. Especially against an Archon. She tapped a slender finger on the map, on the small, isolated icon representing Watatsumi Island. Our resistance is built on strategic principle, not on the uncertain variable of an unknown entity. His actions in Tenshukaku, if accurate, are certainly unprecedented. But his intentions remain unverified. Is he truly for the people, or simply a chaos agent? Her strategic mind immediately began to calculate the risks and benefits. If he was a destructive force, he could devastate their already precarious position. If he was a genuine ally, his power could be invaluable. But his methods, seemingly chaotic and unprovoked, were a wild card. Observe him, Kokomi instructed, her eyes distant, as if already plotting trajectories. Do not engage directly. I need to understand his patterns. His motivations. A true strategist does not commit forces until the terrain and the enemy are fully understood. And this, Naruto, he is the most intriguing terrain I have encountered. Naruto, meanwhile, after his profound encounter in Tenshukaku, felt an undeniable pull towards Watatsumi Island. The electro-resonance of Narukami was still strong, but it felt lighter now. More breathable. The true heart of Inazuma's suffering, however, seemed to emanate from the isolated resistance, a beacon of defiant pain and unwavering resolve. He didn't know their leader, but he felt the immense burden of leadership. The sheer weight of responsibility, emanating from their stronghold. He moved through the outer islands, now less wary of direct contact, seeing with his own eyes the widespread effects of the Vision Hunt decree. He saw farmers unable to work their fields efficiently without their pyrovisions, craftsmen unable to hone their skills without their electro. He saw people shrinking, their spirits dimmed, living in quiet desperation. The contrast to the vibrant lives he had subtly observed and nudged back into existence was stark. One afternoon, as he traversed a secluded, overgrown path on an island that served as a supply route for the resistance, he stumbled upon a skirmish. A small patrol of the Shogun's samurai, heavily armored, had cornered a group of resistance fighters, a ragtag bunch. But fierce, led by a stocky, determined woman with a large bow. It was Garo and his scouting party. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and running low on ammunition. Fall back, everyone, Garo bellowed, letting loose a volley of arrows, one of which deflected harmlessly off a samurai's heavy armor. Protect the supplies. We can't let them get their hands on this medical aid. The samurai pressed their attack, their movements precise and brutal. One warrior, wielding a polearm, lunged directly at a resistance fighter carrying a satchel of medical supplies. Naruto, observing from a hidden vantage point atop a gnarled tree, saw the desperation in Garo's eyes, the unwavering courage of the fighters, and the clear intention of the samurai to confiscate vital resources. This wasn't just a skirmish, it was an act of deliberate oppression. He didn't hesitate, but he also didn't reveal himself fully. With a subtle ripple of his etheric resonance, he focused a precise, invisible pulse of energy. The samurai charging the medic suddenly stumbled, as if his foot had caught on a root that wasn't there. He regained his balance, but the momentary disruption was enough. The resistance fighter managed to roll clear. Another samurai swung a wide, powerful arc with his katana towards Goro. Before the blade could connect, Naruto willed a gust of wind, not a violent one, but a perfectly timed, concentrated vortex that snatched the samurai's helmet clean off his head, sending it tumbling into the undergrowth. Disoriented, the samurai faltered, giving Goro an opening to land a solid, non-lethal kick to his midsection. Naruto continued his subtle, almost undetectable interventions. A rock slide, seemingly natural, temporarily blocked the samurai's retreat path. A sudden, inexplicable fog, localized to the samurai's position, caused them to lose cohesion and communication. He was a ghost in the trees, a silent architect of advantage, turning the tide with precision. Avoiding direct conflict unless absolutely necessary. He was not fighting for them, he was empowering them to fight for themselves. Goro, battling furiously, noticed these strange occurrences. His sharp military mind, though bewildered, quickly adapted. He exploited every coincidence, every lucky break, pushing his men to rally. The samurai, confused and frustrated by the unseen forces working against them, eventually, reluctantly, retreated, abandoning their pursuit of the medical supplies. As the resistance fighters regrouped, tending to their wounded, Goro looked around, searching. Did anyone else notice that? He asked, panting slightly. The wind, the fog, it was too convenient. A young resistance fighter, his face smudged with dirt, pointed. General Goro, look. Naruto, sensing the immediate danger had passed, emerged from the tree line, his azure robes shimmering softly in the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. He walked towards them, his hands open, a calm, reassuring presence. His smile was genuine, empathetic. Goro immediately raised his bow, a formidable weapon. Who are you? And what was that? Are you a yokai allied with the Shogun? Naruto stopped a respectful distance away. Neither, General, just a passerby who believes in fair fights, and helping those who struggle for what's right. He gestured to the salvaged medical supplies. It seemed you needed a little atmospheric assistance. Goro eyed him suspiciously. Atmospheric assistance? You control the elements without a vision. Are you a god, or some new type of Fatui agent? Naruto chuckled softly. No god, General, and certainly no agent of oppression. Just Naruto. And I've seen enough of Inazuma to know that this eternity has become a cruel form of stagnation. Your fight, it resonates. He looked around at the weary but resolute faces of the resistance fighters. You fight for something true. For freedom. For the right to change and grow. Our fight is our own, Goro retorted, still wary. We don't need the help of unknown, seemingly omnipotent strangers. Especially ones who challenge the very Archon herself. Divine Priestess Kokomi would never approve of such a wild card. Perhaps, Naruto said, his gaze drifting towards the distant Watatsumi Island, feeling the strategic mind, the burdened leadership. But even the most brilliant strateg East can benefit from an unexpected variable. And sometimes, a wild card is exactly what's needed to break a stalemate. He paused, his expression becoming more serious. I offer my assistance, General. Not as a commander, but as a force multiplier. An aide, one who understands the flow of power, and how to redirect it. Goro hesitated, torn between his ingrained caution and the undeniable evidence of Naruto's benevolent, yet powerful intervention. He saw no malice in the man's eyes, only a profound sense of purpose. He knew the resistance was struggling, stretched thin, desperately in need of any advantage. But committing to such a mysterious figure, one who had literally shaken the Shogun's palace, was a decision beyond his pay grade. I must consult with the Divine Priestess, Goro finally said, lowering his bow slightly. Though still watchful, she is our supreme strategist. She will decide. Of course, Naruto replied, understanding and patience in his voice. Lead the way. Avenue of feeling your Divine Priestess and I will find much to discuss. And so, under Goro's hesitant escort, Naruto made his way to Watatsumi Island. As they traversed the hidden paths and entered the vibrant, Bioluminescent landscape of Sangonomiya, Naruto felt a tangible shift in the emotional resonance. Here, there was hope, but it was fragile, burdened by immense responsibility. He felt the weight of every strategic decision, every life, every failure, upon the shoulders of one individual. He was finally brought before Sangonomiya Kokomi, who sat in her command tent, poring over strategy maps. She looked up as Goro entered, her serene eyes immediately assessing the tall, azure-clad figure beside him. Her gaze was unblinking, sharp, dissecting him with a quiet intensity. "Divine Priestess, this is Naruto," Goro announced, still with a trace of apprehension. "He intervened in our skirmish, rendering invaluable, if unconventional, assistance. He now offers his full support to the resistance." Kokomi studied Naruto for a long moment, her expression unreadable. She sensed his immense power, the unique energy signature that defied elemental classification, the one she had picked up in the distant reports from Tenshukaku. But more than that, she sensed his intention, not to dominate, but to aid. Not to destroy, but to empower. Her strategic mind, accustomed to calculating probabilities, found itself grappling with a variable that defied all known equations. "Naruto," Kokomi said, her voice soft, melodic, yet carrying an undeniable undercurrent of authority. "You challenge the Shogun, yet aid a fishing village. You walk through Tenshukaku unscathed, yet subtly redirect a skirmish rather than simply eradicating your opponents. Your actions contradict conventional logic. Explain yourself." Naruto met her gaze, his own filled with a calm honesty. "Divine Priestess, conventional logic often fails to account for the true nature of things. The Shogun seeks to control, to enforce a static order, believing it to be peace. But peace without freedom is merely stagnation. Your resistance, though small, seeks true freedom, true life. I simply agree with your principles." He took a step closer, his presence warm and reassuring. "I have seen the suffering your people endure. The Vision Hunt Decree, the Sakoku Decree, they are not measures of eternity, but chains of slow decay." He gestured to her maps. "Your strategies are brilliant, Divine Priestess. Your understanding of logistics, morale, and terrain is exceptional. But you are fighting a force that controls the very elements themselves. A force that has retreated from the world into a rigid ideology. You need more than brilliant strategy. You need a shift in the very paradigm of conflict." Kokomi's eyebrows raised infinitesimally. He was not flattering her, he was dissecting her situation with pinpoint accuracy. Her brilliance was hampered by the sheer, overwhelming power of the Shogun, and her own principles of avoiding needless bloodshed. "And you believe you are that shift?" she asked, her voice tinged with a challenge. Naruto's smile was calm, confident, yet entirely without arrogance. "I believe, I can show you how to truly break the dam, Divine Priestess. Not with a cataclysmic flood, but by finding the true currents. By showing Inazuma what genuine, living change looks like. And by empowering your people to reclaim their own strength." He extended a hand, palm open, not in demand, but in quiet offering. "I will not command your army. I will not seek glory. I will simply be the wind beneath your sails." Kokomi looked at his outstretched hand, then back at his cerulean eyes. She saw unwavering determination, profound empathy, and an undeniable aura of power that was both immense and incredibly controlled. She weighed his words, his actions, and the unprecedented reports from Narukami. Her strategic mind, which had always sought the optimal path, suddenly saw a new, daring possibility. He was a variable, yes, but one that could potentially shift every known equation in their favor. He was not a weapon to be wielded, but a force to be integrated. She slowly reached out, her delicate fingers brushing his. The brief contact sent a jolt, not of electricity, but of pure, vibrant energy, through her. It was a sense of profound possibility, of burdens shared, of hope rekindled. "Very well, Naruto," Kokomi said, her voice still soft, but now laced with a rare, genuine spark of excitement. "Let us see if this wind can truly guide us to victory." She then looked at her meticulously drawn map of Inazuma, tracing the routes of the Shogun's forces, the supply lines, the key strategic locations. A new light entered her eyes. "General Goro, begin preparations for a renewed, decentralized campaign. I believe we have a new tactical advisor to consider. She turned back to Naruto, her serene expression now holding a subtle, almost imperceptible warmth. Tell me, Naruto, how do you truly propose to break the dam? My strategic models are eager for your insights. Naruto's smile broadened. He pointed to a small, unassuming island on her map, a key choke point for the Shogun's naval supply routes. First, Divine Priestess, we make them feel the constant, unpredictable erosion of the river. We cut off their lifelines, without ever truly engaging their main force. And then, we show them that eternity cannot feed an empty stomach. As dusk settled over Watatsumi Island, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and soft violet, Naruto stood with Kokomi, looking out over the moonlit waters. The bioluminescent coral cast a gentle glow on their faces. The air was filled with the sounds of the ocean and the renewed, albeit cautious, energy of the resistance. Naruto turned to her, his profile illuminated by the soft light. This is a beautiful island, Divine Priestess. A sanctuary. But true sanctuary must extend beyond its shores. It must be woven into the very fabric of the nation. Are you prepared to truly weave a new future, one that embraces change, even if it means altering the very tapestry of Inazuma? Kokomi's eyes, reflecting the distant stars, held a newfound determination. She looked at the man beside her, a force of nature who spoke of profound change with such calm conviction. Her heart, burdened by the weight of her people, felt a lightness it hadn't known in years. His presence was a beacon, a catalyst, and she, the cautious strategist, found herself drawn to his audacious vision. The intricate dance of respect and strategic compatibility had sown the first seeds of something deeper, something beyond mere alliance. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Ona's Challenge and the Spirit of Inazuma. The tale of the Azure Anomaly had, by now, blossomed beyond mere whispers into full-blown street legends, particularly within the bustling, vibrant, and often boisterous districts of Inazuma City. Merchants whispered of sudden, unexplainable surges in their dwindling stock. Artists, once listless, found themselves blessed with unexpected bursts of inspiration, and everywhere, a subtle, almost imperceptible current of renewed hope flowed beneath the oppressive decrees. For the common folk, whose lives were dictated by the strictures of the Shogun, this mysterious figure, Naruto, had become a symbol of defiance, a fantastical disruption to their monotonous reality. This news, however, reached the ears of one particular individual not as a solemn rumor, but as a direct challenge, a clarion call to prove her own might. Arataki Ito-chan, the bombastic, self-proclaimed leader of the Arataki gang, an Oni of unparalleled spirit and unyielding confidence, heard of the Azure Dude, who fought the Shogun and walked away. Such an act resonated deep within her Oni blood, stirring a competitive fire that eclipsed all other concerns. She sat perched atop a weathered wooden crate in a back alley of Hanamazaka, loudly recounting exaggerated tales of her own past glories to her two equally boffy, if less charismatic, gang members, Akuro and Genta. A half-eaten plate of dango milk lay abandoned beside her. And then, I, the one and only Arataki Ito-chan, faced down that enormous electro-hypostasis with nothing but my fists and pure Oni grit. She bellowed, punctuating her tale with an enthusiastic thump on the crate. It didn't stand a chance. Begged for mercy, it did. Called me the Oni Queen of Thunder. Boss, wasn't that the time you actually ran away and hid behind the Shrine Maiden's skirts? Akuro muttered, ever the pragmatist. Ito-chan shot him a withering glare, her red Oni horns twitching indignantly. Details, Akuro, details. The point is, I'm the strongest, the most awesome, the biggest hero of Inazuma City. So when I hear about some Azure Anomaly waltzing in, shaking up the Shogun's pad and making lightning do tricks, well, that's just rude. There's only one real show in town, and that's me. She leapt off the crate, striking a heroic pose. Her white hair, adorned with traditional Oni markings, flowed wildly, and her muscular frame, clad in a distinctive red and black outfit, vibrated with boundless energy. Her boisterous nature was a stark contrast to the subdued atmosphere of the city, a vibrant anomaly in itself. Heard he even made a wooden bird fly, Genta added, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Like, really fly, without a string. Ito-chan's eyes widened. A flying wooden bird, you say? HMPH. I bet I can make a rock sing. Anyway, this, Naruto, guy sounds like he needs a proper eye. Introduction to the true spirit of Inazuma. He needs to meet the one and only Arataki Ito-chan. And then, we'll have a contest. A super duper, awesomely epic contest. To see who's really the baddest dude, person, on the block. She pumped a fist into the air, already envisioning glorious victory. Naruto, meanwhile, had found that Inazuma City, despite its heavy martial law, pulsed with a raw, undeniable energy. It was a city of contradictions. Beauty overshadowed by oppression, resilience coexisting with desperation, and a vibrant street culture stubbornly clinging to life amidst the gloom. He needed to understand the pulse of the common folk, the true heart of the city, and the hidden networks that defied the strictures. He decided to simply immerse himself, walking the crowded streets, observing, listening, and occasionally, subtly, lending a hand where he could. He saw a group of street vendors being harassed by a particularly zealous Kanju commission officer, demanding exorbitant taxes. As Naruto passed, a small, strategically placed gust of wind, one of his more subtle etheric manipulations, caused the officer's ledger to fly open, scattering papers everywhere and revealing a hidden pouch of illicit mora he had been pocketing. The officer, flustered and exposed, quickly retreated amidst the jeers of the crowd. The vendors, bewildered but grateful, continued their trade, unaware of their silent benefactor. He noticed a group of children, their faces thin, wistfully staring at a shop window displaying bright, colorful kites. Later, as he walked through a quiet park, he briefly paused by a discarded pile of scrap wood and tattered fabric. With a few swift, precise motions of his hands, imbued with a faint shimmer of golden energy, he fashioned several simple, yet sturdy, kites. He left them hanging from a low branch, then vanished, knowing they would soon bring joy to small, desperate lives. It was during one such stroll, amidst the boisterous chaos of a small, unsanctioned street festival in Hanamazaka, a defiant burst of color and music against the city's usual somber mood, that he first encountered Ito-chan. The festival was a raucous affair, with makeshift food stalls, street performers, and a small, informal brawling ring where locals tested their strength. Suddenly, a loud, booming voice cut through the festival din. "All right, you puny mortals. Way for the mightiest Oni in all of Inazuma. The undefeated, undisputed, fantastically fabulous Arataki Ito-chan." Naruto turned, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Ito-chan was a whirlwind of energy, challenging everyone in sight to a strength contest. She was loud, unrefined, but possessed an undeniable magnetism, a pure, unadulterated passion that was a breath of fresh air in the stifling city. "Hey, you," Ito-chan suddenly bellowed, her eyes locking onto Naruto. She had seen his distinctive azure robes and felt the unusual, vibrant energy that emanated from him, a stark contrast to the passive energy of the civilians around him. He radiated a quiet power that resonated with her own Oni strength. "You look strong. Azure robes, golden hair, you're that azure anomaly, dude everyone's been yammering about. Aren't ya, the one who spooked the Shogun?" Naruto chuckled. "I suppose that's one way to put it. Naruto, at your service." He bowed slightly, a gesture that both amused and surprised Ito-chan. Naruto, well, Naruto, prepare to face the wrath. No, wait, the challenge, of the greatest Oni to ever walk Inazuma. The one and only Arataki Ito-chan. She puffed out her chest, a competitive fire blazing in her eyes. "I hear you're good with your hands. Can you arm wrestle? I'll take on anyone, even you, Mr. Shogun Spooker." Naruto's smile widened. This was precisely the kind of vibrant, unadulterated spirit that Inazuma desperately needed to remember. He saw past her boisterous exterior to the fiercely loyal heart beneath, the genuine desire for connection and recognition. Arm wrestle. Naruto tilted his head, feigning consideration. Sounds like a proper challenge. I accept." A crowd immediately gathered, sensing the impending spectacle. Akuro and Genta, though nervous, quickly set up a sturdy wooden table. Ito-chan slammed her elbow down, flexing her considerable bicep. "All right, pretty boy, let's see what you've got. Don't go ying to your mommy when you face the unyielding might of the Arataki gang." Naruto placed his hand firmly against hers. His grip was warm, solid, and utterly unyielding. Ito-chan strained, her muscles bulging, veins popping in her neck. She pushed with all her formidable Oni strength, but Naruto's arm remained perfectly still, as if rooted to the earth. Not an inch, not even a millimeter. He wasn't resisting. He was simply unmovable. He even leaned in slightly, a mischievous glint in his eye. Having trouble, Ito-chan? He teased, his voice low and smooth. Perhaps you need to put some more spirit into it. Ito-chan roared in frustration, pushing even harder, but it was like trying to budge a mountain. Finally, with a frustrated grunt, she slammed her free hand on the table. All right, uncle, you're strong. Stronger than you look, Azure dude. She pouted, but a spark of genuine admiration flickered in her eyes. But that was just a warm-up. How about a ramen eating contest? My specialty is the Ona's Fiery Feast, 30 bowls, extra spicy. Naruto laughed, a rich, genuine sound that drew smiles from the onlookers. Now that's a challenge I can get behind. Lead the way, Ito-chan. The ramen eating contest was a blur of slurping, exaggerated chewing, and Ito-chan's endless boasts. Naruto, to her utter frustration, ate with a casual, almost elegant speed, finishing each bowl just as she was halfway through hers. He didn't seem to even break a sweat, while Ito-chan was red-faced, sweating, and finally, after 28 bowls, admitted defeat with a dramatic groan. All right, you win the eating contest, you bottomless pit, Ito-chan declared, clutching her stomach. But this isn't over. Now, for the real test. The main event. The Arataki Ito-chan's grand brawl. Just me and you. No holds barred. Let's see if that Azure anomaly can handle a real Oni beatdown. Naruto grinned. A brawl. I think I can manage that. They moved to the informal brawling ring. A cleared space in the alley where onlookers formed a tight circle. Ito-chan, despite her earlier defeats, radiated pure excitement. She was in her element. She launched herself at Naruto, a blur of powerful, unrefined strikes. Her fists, hard as rock, aimed for his face, her kicks for his legs. She fought with the raw, untamed passion of an Oni, every move imbued with a straightforward, devastating power. Naruto didn't fight back with equal force. Instead, he moved like water, fluid and adaptable. He weaved, swayed, and dodged with an effortless grace that frustrated Ito-chan to no end. Her punches passed through empty air, her kicks found no purchase. He was always just out of reach, always a step ahead. He wasn't avoiding, he was anticipating. He redirected her momentum, spun her off balance, and occasionally, with a gentle touch, nudged her own fist to hit her own palm, a playful, non-damaging counter that exasperated her. Stop dodging, you big coward. Ito-chan yelled, a mixture of frustration and exhilaration in her voice. Stand still and fight me like a real man. But this is fighting, Ito-chan, Naruto said, casually stepping out of the way of a wild swing. I'm showing you the true power of redirection. Of flow. You're strong, immensely so. But you're too rigid, too predictable. True strength isn't just about hitting hard, it's about understanding the current and moving with it. Or against it, only when necessary. He then, with a subtle shift of his weight, caused Ito-chan to overbalance slightly on a punch. Instead of letting her fall, he gently caught her arm, spinning her around in a dizzying circle, and then, with a light push, sent her stumbling harmlessly into the padded ropes of the ring. Ito-chan, dizzy but unharmed, stood up, hands on her hips, panting. Her eyes, though still competitive, were now filled with a genuine, almost childlike wonder. She had never encountered anyone like him. He had utterly dominated her, yet without laying a single forceful blow. You're amazing, Azure dude. She finally blurted out, her competitive spirit momentarily forgotten, replaced by pure admiration. You move like a ghost, but hit like you're not even hitting. It's awesome. You're totally, super duper awesome. She grinned, a wide, infectious grin that drew smiles from the crowd. All right, you win. You're the strongest. You're my eternal rival. And my best bud. You gotta join the Arataki gang. We'll show this whole city what real power looks like. Naruto laughed again, a warm, genuine laugh. Eternal rival and best bud, huh? I like the sound of that, Ito-chan. He extended a hand, and she instinctively high-fived it, her grip surprisingly warm and sincere. As for joining your gang, perhaps I already have. You and your crew, Ito-chan, you have the spirit this city needs. The spirit of defiance, of life, of unwavering joy. That's a powerful thing. He then leaned in conspiratorially, his voice dropping to a lower, more serious tone, though still with a hint of playfulness. Tell me, Ito-chan, do you and your gang know anything about the whispers? The hidden movements of the Kanju Commission, perhaps? Or any unusually strict patrols in the port areas? Ito-chan's eyes gleamed. Oh, you betcha, best bud. We're the eyes and ears of Hanamazaka. Nothing gets past the Arataki gang. We know all the sneaky routes. All the corrupt officers, all the back alley deals. Why, you got a new challenge for us. Something super awesome we can do. Naruto smiled. Something very important. Something that will help the entire city. It involves revealing a few hidden truths. And perhaps, ensuring that the kites always fly freely. Over the next few days, Naruto, working discreetly through Ito-chan and her surprisingly effective, if unconventional, network, began to gather invaluable intelligence. The Arataki gang, now fueled by Ito-chan's unshakable belief in Naruto's awesomeness, and the promise of super awesome challenges, became his unofficial eyes and ears. They uncovered roots of illicit trade, identified corrupt officials within the Kanju and Tenryo commissions who were exploiting the decrees for personal gain, and even stumbled upon encrypted messages detailing increased security around certain vision-rich districts. Ito-chan, initially drawn by Naruto's strength and charisma, found herself increasingly drawn to his kindness, his genuine care for the common folk, and his unwavering commitment to justice. He treated her not as a nuisance, but as a valuable ally. Respecting her unique skills and understanding her inherent goodness, her boisterous admiration for his strength morphed into a fierce, unwavering loyalty, subtly tinged with a nascent, unfamiliar warmth in her own heart. She saw him not just as a rival to surpass, but as a friend to cherish, and perhaps, something more. Naruto, too, found a unique charm in Ito-chan. Her unwavering optimism, her sheer zest for life, and her surprisingly pure heart were a welcome contrast to the often somber atmosphere of Inazuma. She was a raw, untamed force, a living embodiment of the spirit of freedom and resilience that the Shogun's eternity sought to suppress. She was a vital piece of the vibrant, flowing future he envisioned for Inazuma. As the sun set over Inazuma City one evening, casting long shadows down the narrow alleyways, Naruto stood with Ito-chan on a rooftop overlooking the bustling streets. The city hummed with a different kind of energy now, a subtle undercurrent of defiance, of whispers growing bolder. So, what's next, best bud? Ito-chan asked, her voice brimming with excitement, already itching for the next, super awesome challenge. Are we gonna smash some bad guys? Or find some more flying wooden birds? Or maybe another ramen contest? I've been training my stomach. Naruto chuckled, patting her on the shoulder. Something even better, Ito-chan. We're going to expose the shadows clinging to this city. We're going to show everyone that the true spirit of Inazuma is unstoppable. He looked out at the city lights twinkling below, a vast network of hopes and dreams, now subtly interconnected by his presence. And you, Ito-chan, he added, a genuine warmth in his voice, you're going to be a very important part of that. Because your spirit, your unwavering joy, it's a beacon. And sometimes, a beacon is all it takes to light the path. Ito-chan beamed, a blush rising on her cheeks despite herself. She had never been spoken to with such sincerity, such profound appreciation. Her chest swelled with pride, and a new, unfamiliar flutter in her chest. The azure anomaly wasn't just a strong rival, he was something truly special. Chapter 5 End. Ch. Chapter 6. The Architect of Peace and the Chains of Tradition. Rito Island, Inazuma's primary port, was a stark testament to the suffocating weight of the Sakoku Decree. Here, amidst the bustling docks and warehouses, the air was not thick with the vibrant energy of trade, but with the palpable tension of confinement. Foreign merchants, their ships moored indefinitely, languished in squalid conditions, stripped of their goods and their dignity. The local Kanju Commission officers, bloated with unchecked authority, moved like predatory birds, their whispers carrying the chilling weight of arbitrary laws and petty tyrannies. It was a place of desperation, where the concept of eternity manifested as an endless, unchanging cycle of stagnation and suffering. Naruto Uzumaki, having spent days gathering intelligence through the Arataki gang's surprisingly efficient network and his own subtle observations of the city's underbelly, now turned his attention to Rito. He felt the heavy collective sigh of resignation from the imprisoned merchants, the quiet frustration of the local porters whose livelihoods had been decimated, and the oppressive smugness of the officials. This wasn't just a political issue. It was a deeply human one, a chokehold on the very lifeblood of Inazuma's connection to the wider world. He didn't arrive via the crowded ferry, nor did he sneak past the heavily fortified checkpoints. Instead, using his mastery over spatial distortion, he simply shimmered into existence within a quiet, abandoned warehouse overlooking the main docks, appearing as effortlessly as a ghost in the fog. He stood amidst the cobwebs and dust, his azure robes a beacon of vibrant energy in the gloom, his cerulean eyes taking in the scene below with a quiet intensity. The scent of salt, decaying wood, and frustrated hope permeated the air. His plan was not one of overt confrontation, but of precise, surgical disruption. He would not destroy the system. He would unravel it from within, exposing its rotten core. His first target: the Kanju Commission's impenetrable ledger system and their monopolistic control over all incoming and outgoing goods. Using his etheric resonance, he manipulated the ambient electro-energy within the main Rito customs house. Not to cause destruction, but to create precise, frustrating glitches. Ledger entries would randomly swap, shipping manifests would duplicate or vanish, and the automated mechanisms for inventory would frequently jam. It was enough to cause bureaucratic chaos, slowing trade to a crawl and forcing the officers into a desperate, visible frenzy. "What in the Archon's name is happening?" yelled Commissioner Daichi, a portly man notorious for his corruption, as a stack of shipping manifests spontaneously combusted into harmless, shimmering motes of light. "The system is breaking down. We're losing track of everything. This is an outrage." The chaos he sowed wasn't violent, but it was profoundly effective. Supply lines for the Shogun's forces, already strained by the resistance's new, decentralized tactics thanks to Kokomi's implementation of Naruto's earlier advice, began to falter more drastically. Essential goods were delayed, misplaced, or simply vanished into the growing abyss of bureaucratic ineptitude. This caused a ripple effect, sparking frustration among the Tenryou Commission's soldiers who relied on these supplies, and further eroding the public's already thin faith in the Shogun's eternity. Kuju Sera, general of the Tenryou Commission, found herself increasingly exasperated by the reports flowing from Rito. Her face, usually a study in disciplined stoicism, was now a mask of frustrated lines. Her keen strategic mind, accustomed to understanding and solving military problems, found itself grappling with an enemy that seemed to operate on a wholly different plane. Another report, General, her aide, Takashi, informed her, his voice tight. "The supply convoy to Jakatsu Mine has been delayed by 3 days. The Kanju Commission claims unprecedented system failures and anomalous atmospheric interference. And our patrols report an increase in untraceable disruptions, minor landslides, sudden fogs, equipment malfunctions." Sarah slammed a fist softly on her map table, a rare display of frustration. Atmospheric interference, system failures. This is incompetence, or worse, him. Her mind immediately went to Naruto, the Azure Anomaly, who had defied the Musou no Hitodachi and then, inexplicably, recalibrated the Shogun puppet itself. She had seen the eerie serenity in the Shogun's eyes since his departure, the subtle shift in the oppressive aura of Tenshukaku. It was unnerving. She pulled out a detailed dossier on Naruto, compiled from fragmentary reports. His methods defied classification. He wasn't a brute, nor a saboteur in the traditional sense. He was a disassembler. He disrupted without destroying, creating chaos by exposing inherent weaknesses. And this silent, almost invisible, campaign was far more unsettling than any direct assault. It was forcing her, Kuju Sera, the paragon of rigid adherence to duty, to think outside the rigid boxes of military protocol. "General, what are your orders?" Takashi asked, pulling her from her thoughts. Sarah looked at the map, then at the reports. The supply lines were critical. The Kanju Commission, in their greed and incompetence, was failing. And Naruto was somehow, subtly, orchestrating it. A daring, almost rebellious thought sparked in her mind. I will personally oversee a review of the Kanju Commission's operations in Rito. Sarah announced, her voice crisp with renewed resolve. Takashi, prepare a full contingent of my most loyal samurai. We will identify the source of these anomalies and restore order. And if it is him, then I will confront him directly. Meanwhile, Naruto was not just sowing chaos, he was also building bridges. He visited the foreign merchant district, a desolate collection of ramshackle homes where despair hung heavy in the air. He listened to their stories of families separated, of dwindling resources, of the humiliation of their confinement. He didn't offer false promises. Instead, he simply offered a path. He began subtly influencing the guards' patrols, creating temporary blind spots, brief moments of inattention. He showed the merchants how to use these fleeting windows to establish discreet, untraceable communication lines with the outside world, bypassing the Kanju Commission's absolute blockade. He shared simple, effective methods for maintaining morale, for conserving dwindling supplies, and for recognizing the hidden corruption within the Kanju Commission that was truly crippling their lives, not just the Sakoku decree itself. He even appeared, briefly and mysteriously, to a particularly influential foreign merchant named Captain Jorgensen, whose spirit had been completely broken by 2 years of confinement. Naruto materialized in Jorgensen's cramped quarters, simply sitting across from him, sipping a cup of the merchant's last remaining foreign tea. Captain, Naruto said, his voice quiet, you seek freedom, yes. And the right to trade fairly. Jorgensen, initially terrified, found himself strangely calmed by Naruto's serene presence. Freedom, trade, these are but forgotten dreams in this cursed prison. The Shogun's decree, it is unbreakable. Naruto smiled. Perhaps, but a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And the chain of the Sakoku decree is not forged of absolute will, but of corruption and fear. Those who enforce it are just as trapped by its rigid rules as those it confines. Even the almighty Shogun herself might reconsider her path if she saw the true cost of her eternity upon her own land. And upon those who wish to connect with it. Naruto then, with a subtle wave of his hand, made a small, rusted compass on Jorgensen's table suddenly spin wildly, then settle, pointing not north, but directly towards a hidden, unmarked passage out of Rito. Not a physical escape, but a symbolic one. A path to secret information, to undetected communication. The currents of trade, Captain, Naruto said, rising. They will always find a way to flow. Even around the mightiest dam. All it takes is a little redirection. He vanished as subtly as he had appeared, leaving Jorgensen with a renewed spark of hope and a compass that seemed to hum with silent possibilities. It was amidst this carefully orchestrated chaos that Kuju Sarah arrived in Rito. She moved with her usual military precision, her Tengu eyes missing nothing. She immediately sensed the tension, the undercurrent of hope she hadn't expected. She saw the Kanju Commission in disarray, their inefficiency blatant. She felt subtle disturbances in the electro-energy of the port, the telltale signs of Naruto's presence. She was leading a detailed investigation in a large warehouse, examining a series of inexplicable equipment failures. When the air around her subtly shifted, a faint shimmer of azure energy, almost imperceptible, caused the flickering lantern lights to steady and the pervasive dust to settle. Sarah spun around, her katana already half drawn. Show yourself, azure anomaly. She commanded, her voice ringing with authority. Your disruptions end here. Naruto materialized a few feet away, leaning casually against a stacked crate. A small, knowing smile on his face. General Sarah, I presume. He said, his voice calm, even welcoming. Or perhaps, the general who finds herself questioning the nature of her own eternity. Sarah's eyes narrowed, a flicker of raw frustration in their depths. Do not presume to know my thoughts, intruder. You sow chaos. You undermine the Shogun's authority. Your actions threaten the very peace of Inazuma. Peace. Naruto tilted his head, his smile softening, losing its playful edge and gaining a hint of sadness. Is it peace, General, when families are separated? When livelihoods are destroyed? When the very spirit of innovation is stifled by a fear of change? Is it peace when the very land groans under the weight of forced stasis? He gestured around the warehouse, indicating the neglected goods, the signs of desperation. You call it peace. I call it suffocation. He stepped forward, his movements fluid and unthreatening. You are a woman of honor, General. I sense it. You truly believe in your duty to Inazuma. But I ask you to look, truly look, at the cost of this, eternity. At the corruption that festers in its shadows, allowed to thrive be. 'Cause no one dares to question the divine will. Sarah bristled. The Shogun's will is absolute. It is perfect. The corruption you speak of are mere imperfections in enforcement. They will be purged. Purged by what, General? Naruto asked, his voice gentle, yet penetrating. By more rigidity, more control, or by understanding the true nature of what you fight for. He extended a hand, and a small, delicate bloom of a Sango pearl, luminous and vibrant, formed in his palm, defying the dusty, stale air of the warehouse. True eternity, General, is like this pearl. It grows, it evolves, it embraces the currents around it, taking in nourishment, adapting to pressure, and becoming something more beautiful for it. The Shogun's eternity, it seeks to freeze the pearl, to prevent it from ever growing. He held out the Sango pearl to her. Look at your Kanju commission, General. Look at the suffering in this port. Is this truly the peace your Archon envisioned? Or is it a perversion, allowed to fester because the very concept of unchanging prevents necessary adaptation? Sarah stared at the Sango pearl, then at Naruto. His words, calm and reasoned, cut through her rigid framework of duty with shocking precision. She had seen the corruption. She had felt the frustration. Her own tactical brilliance was constantly hampered by the rigidity of the decrees she was sworn to uphold. He wasn't attacking her. He was forcing her to see. He wasn't insulting the Shogun. He was questioning the execution of her will, the perversion of her ideal. What do you propose? Sarah asked, her voice uncharacteristically soft, betraying a flicker of internal turmoil. How do you unravel a system without destroying it? And why do you care so much about this land? I care because I see life being stifled, General, Naruto replied, his gaze unwavering. And I propose to expose the rotten threads that hold this eternity together. To show the Shogun that her true peace lies not in stagnation, but in nurturing a vibrant, evolving Inazuma, one where the currents of trade and communication flow freely, but honestly. One where her people can truly live and grow. He then revealed his plan, not a grand battle, but a meticulously orchestrated information leak. He would provide Sarah with undeniable, irrefutable evidence of the Kanju Commission's deep-seated corruption, of their deliberate exploitation of the Sakoku decree for personal gain, and of their active suppression of true information from reaching the Shogun's inner circle. This information, gleaned from Ito-chan's network and his own subtle probes, was damning. You, General, are a symbol of loyalty and justice, Naruto stated, his voice ringing with conviction. Use that symbol. Present this evidence to your superiors. Expose the true rot within. Do not fight me, General. Fight with me, for the true Inazuma. The one that struggles beneath the weight of this false eternity. Sarah stared at the detailed data chips Naruto presented. Data that would expose years of illicit dealings, siphoned funds, and manufactured shortages, all disguised under the guise of the Sakoku decree. The evidence was overwhelming. It implicated some of the highest-ranking officials, men she had always considered pillars of the Shogun's order. Her mind raced. This was treason. To expose such corruption, so high up, was to challenge the very structure she had sworn to uphold. But if she did nothing, the corruption would continue to fester, poisoning the very nation she loved. And the man before her, who had effortlessly bypassed every defense, who understood the Archon's essence, who spoke of a true, living eternity, was offering her a path. A path not of destruction, but of purification. She looked at Naruto, his cerulean eyes calm and resolute, filled with a deep, compelling honesty. He wasn't asking her to betray Inazuma. He was asking her to betray a corrupted system for Inazuma. The choice was clear, yet agonizing. Her duty was shifting. Her respect for this enigmatic man, born from witnessing his power and compassion, deepened, twisting into an undeniable admiration that transcended the battlefield. He was not just a threat, he was a revolutionary. And he saw her, Kuju Sera, as a capable, honorable force for change, not just a rigid soldier. Very well, Naruto, Sera said, her voice low, laced with a newfound resolve that shook her own stern composure. Her grip on the data chips tightened. I will investigate these claims. And if they are true, then Inazuma will see a purification it has not known in centuries. She looked at the Sango pearl still shimmering faintly in Naruto's palm. But do not think this makes us allies. We simply have a shared, momentary objective. A faint blush touched her stern cheeks, a rare sign of her internal turmoil. Naruto simply smiled. The currents of fate, General, often flow in unexpected directions. Sometimes, shared objectives can lead to unexpected alliances. And perhaps, unexpected destinies. He then dematerialized as silently as he had appeared, leaving Sera alone in the warehouse, clutching the evidence, her loyalty irrevocably fractured, her path irrevocably changed. The first crack in the rigid facade of the Shogun's direct rule had been made, not by a sword, but by the quiet, persuasive truth. The architect of peace had begun to dismantle the chains of tradition, one deliberate, precise intervention at a time. The gears of change, set in motion by the fifth descender, were turning, silently at first, but gaining inexorable momentum. Chapter 6 End. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.